In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a book cover like this in Photoshop, and this is coming up. Hi everybody, Innocent here and welcome to the channel. Over here we make videos like this. If that is something that sounds like you're interested, kindly consider subscribing. Inside the description will be a link to download all the resources that I will use for this video. In case you want to practice, you can download, and in case you do and you want to show it to me, you can hit me up on all my socials. Now let's get into Photoshop and let's get started. All right, so here in Photoshop, the first thing you want to do is you want to create a canvas. To do that, you press Ctrl+N and then it's going to open this for you. You're going to use A5 for this, but depending on the size that you want to use, you can go for any size at all. So if you don't see it in your recent items, you can go to print and then you can view all presets. By the way, I'm using Photoshop 2025 for this. So you can select A5 here and then you can click on create. And we want this in the landscape mode, so it's already in portrait. So let's select landscape over here and click on create. Now, whether you selected A4, A3 or A5, you are pretty much going to see something like this. It looks almost the same, but it is the size afterwards that would matter. First things first, let's set some guides so that it will guide us as to know the middle of the page, the edges, so that we don't put important stuff out of these edges. To do that, we go to view and we go to guides. So we are going to set new guides. Now, depending on the space that you want to use, you might want to set different, but for this case we are going to set 1% vertical. We go for view again, new guides, and we are going to do 99%, so that is 100 minus 1. All right, we do that for the vertical vertices, and this time around I'll go to guides again, new guide, and we can do for the horizontal. So we select horizontal and we put in 1% over here and 99% for the bottom part. Now we need to make sure that we have the center divided as well. So we go back to view, guides, and new guide, and we can do vertical again. This time we're going to do 49%. Go back and we can do 51%. Click OK. So now you have the center divided, and that means that anything that we want to do here is going to be in the confines of these guides that we set. And now that we are ready, let's add some colors. So first off, let's go to the create new fill or adjustment layer here and select gradient. You then click on our gradient bar and you can choose your gradient, any gradient at all. I've already set this gradient over here, so this is the first color if you want to use the same thing, and this is the second color. Once you're done and you like it, you can click OK and then OK from here. Now over here you can play with the angles or the reverse. You can reverse it, you can change the angle, you can change to radial, angle, reflected, anyone, but we are using linear. And once you've gotten the exact one that you want, you can click on OK. Let's bring a custom background. So you go to file, place embedded, and then you can bring in your image. I got most of these from ImageFX and I generated different versions so that you can play around with your creativity. So this particular one here worked really well for me, so you're going to bring that in, and I believe that when we bring in the about of the book, you are going to pretty much understand the reason why I chose this background. So we're going to transform this to make it way bigger. Somewhere around here we are much particular about this moon here, so you can zoom out and then you can continue to increase it. Something like this should work. Afterwards, you right click on the layer, you go to rasterize layer, and then you can press Ctrl+Shift+U to desaturate this. Next up, you go to the blending mode over here, and then you can set it to any blending mode that works for you. The one that worked for me was this one, this soft light. And at this point, if you feel like it's too hard in the background, you can go to filter, blur, and Gaussian blur to add a bit of blur to it. But zooming in, I can see that this doesn't really scream too hard in the background, so we can maintain this. We then go back to file again, this embedded, and we are going to bring in another image. So the background story of this book was the combination of the Ewe and the Akan tribes, so I thought it wise to put the two tribes together. So we are going to bring this one here, double click on it, you right click, and then you rasterize it. Press Ctrl+Shift+U to desaturate it, and then we can set that also to soft light. You can then transform it very nicely like this. We don't want it too much at the background or in the background, so we can brush off a part of it. Okay, so we can add our layer mask to it, select our brush tool, and you can right click and decrease your brush size if it feels like too much. You can as well use the curly brackets here to decrease or increase it. Is it a curly bracket or the square brackets? Okay. So once you've gotten it, and make sure your foreground color is black, and then you can brush off the parts that you don't want so that it blends in with the background. You can then press Ctrl T to transform it some more, somewhere around here, and you can double click on that. Next up, you make a duplicate. So Ctrl plus J to duplicate that, and then we can push it to this side. Now, what we can do is we can right click on the layer mask and say delete layer mask. This time around, we want the Goldin's tool over here. I mean, a replica of the Goldin's tool. So we are going to add the layer mask back, and then we can brush off this part this time around so that the Goldin's tool will be visible over there. And once we've gotten it this way, I think we are set for the backgrounds. But if this feels like it's too brighter for you, you can go to your create new fill adjustments and you can add curves to it, tone it down slightly, and it should be good to go. So this is going to be our background. The rest will be the text that we put on it. So the first one will be the title of the book. So we select our text tool. The font that we are using is called Anton. You left click, and I've already copied my text, so I'll paste it over here. Choose your move tool, and then you make sure that you position it somewhere around here. You know, we need the moon to be somewhere here, so let's select the background, press Ctrl T, and try to transform it down a little. Yeah, I think this place works. And oh, since we are focusing on the sun of the children and the brightness, we can go back to our gradient and do some quick adjustments over here. So let's change this to radial, reverse it, and we are going to decrease this to around, say, 46. You see, with your gradient, you can drag this somewhere around here. We want the brightness and the focus to be over here. Okay, and now we can click on OK, and you can even turn off your curves over here. Now we can select this background and tone it down slightly like this as well. And in this case, you realize that the focus comes to the front page. That is exactly the look that I was going for. So now back to the test. Once you're done with this, we can go for another test, and we can select this one to the font you're going to use, Trajan Pro. Okay, let's go for the bold, and we can paste our text. Now press Ctrl T, transform it very nicely. So that is like a subheading. Okay, and then you can put it somewhere around here, and you're good. Now, once you're done with the text for the top part, we can now introduce our subject or the image that we are going to use for this. So you press Ctrl O, you go to your files, and then you can bring in your subject. I got two for you, so you can use anyone that you want. But this one worked really well for me. So you unlock your layer, you go to Windows, Properties, and then you go to Quick Actions here, and then you can remove the background. Once you're done with that, you choose your move tool, and then you can send it into your project. You bring it somewhere around here, press Ctrl T and try to transform it, but not too much. Remember your guidelines and use it accordingly. So somewhere around here should be fine. You can press Ctrl H to turn off your guides to see how far you're coming, especially if it is distracting you. And you can press Ctrl H to bring it back again. On top of that, you can put the name of the author. So you select your text. Let's go for Poppins, and then let's paste the name of the author. Press Ctrl T, transform it very nicely, and it can be right on top here. So somewhere around here. Now the difficulty here is you might not know the exact middle, but with the help of your guides, let me zoom in clearly. You can see that this purple lines is showing you that at least this is in the middle of text, so you can take your time and position it. Now on top of the image, you want to add some effect to it. So you go to your documents, place embedded, and then you can bring in this kind of a lens flare type of thing. So you go to blend mode, and you can set this to screen. You check it out, and then you can press Ctrl T, transform it nicely, and we want to put that on top of the lantern that you are holding, and you can leave it somewhere over here. Or if you zoom in carefully, you can see that there are some edges around it. So you right click, you rasterize your layer, and then you can add layer mask to it. Choose your brush tool, and you can brush those parts off. So this is before and this is after. Now, once we're done with this, we can then do the back of the book. So to do that one, we're going to select a rectangle tool. We're going to create a rectangle somewhere around here. You try as much as possible to fit it in the middle. So you press Ctrl A, and you can align vertical centers. That one sets the exact middle one. But for the horizontal vertices, since it is not the entire canvas, you might have to adjust it yourself. Now we can change the color to black. And then we can decrease the opacity. You can go as low as 15 or 16. Let's say 14. 14 is fine. We want to see the background, okay? And on top of that, we're going to put our text. So the first text, we go back to Anton. Of course, you are putting the text right on top of the rectangle. You can see the sign here, okay? You don't want to do that. You hold shift before you left click to create the text. And we are going to put the about the book. I am press Ctrl T and transform it to make it a bit bigger. Position it somewhere around here. We can now change the font to Poppins, and let's select the medium regular, and we can create what is known as a text box. Okay, so you create a text box over here, and you can paste your about or about the book. Let's decrease the font slightly. We want all of it to be in there, so we can go around. Something like this works, and then you can position it somewhere around here. Now if you drag this down, you can see that there is still some of the text underneath of it. So let's go for 7.5 and see. Oh, it's now within the rectangle. Okay, so we can then push it up slightly like that. And what happened here? How about the book change? So let's go back to Anton and select that, and then we can position it over here. I probably would ask how I have this text layout like this. If you don't get it automatically like this, you can go to your toggle character, go to your paragraphs, and then you can set it to justified last left. Okay, so it's because of the previous settings that I used. That is why when I pasted the text, I have it like this. But if you don't get it like that, you can do this and you are going to have it like this. You can as well justify it centered or justify it right, but justified left works for me. Now if you press Ctrl H, you can turn off your guides, and this is what you have. Even more so at the background, you can add like hue and saturation if you want to play around with the colors by adding a hue and saturation from the create new fill adjustments, and then you can play around with the colors. But make sure that if you are going to do this, you pay attention to the effects that you added to the lantern as well. So none of the colors worked for me, so I feel like the original colors over here worked. And there, just like that, you create a very nice simple book cover for your design. I'm going to try to put them on a mock-up so that you see how it actually looks like over here. And there, that's it for this video. I hope you get value out of this. If you did, subscribe to the channel will be so very much appreciated. Thank you so much for sticking around to watch this video. See you guys in the next video. It's Innocent here, and bye.